Your brother will run the business now. You were never cut out for this. Those words came from my father's mouth in the lawyer's office, sharp as the edge of the contract sliding across polished wood. His tone wasn't just cold, it was mocking, deliberate, meant to remind me that I was no longer part of the family's empire. For a moment, the air felt too heavy to breathe. The blinds rattled softly against the window pane, and I remember wondering if the entire city outside could hear the sound of my world breaking. Hi everyone, my name is Marissa Hale, I'm 27. And I've learned something the hard way: betrayal never comes from strangers. I sat there, staring at the documents that stripped me of everything. Not just wealth, my identity, my years of contribution, my very seat at the family table. The ink on the page declared my brother, Lucas, sole inheritor and director of the business my grandfather had built from nothing. Lucas, with his smug grin, leaned back like a king finally crowned. He didn't even look at me when he said, "Don't make this harder than it already is. Just, leave. Leave." That was the command. Not just from my brother, but from my father, the man who raised me, only to toss me aside like an unwanted liability. My mother didn't speak. She kept her eyes on the floor, as if silence could erase her complicity. I rose, slow, deliberate, as if each step carried me deeper into exile. But inside me, something sharp was forming. A vow, silent but burning. Outside the office, the world looked the same, cars honking, sunlight slicing through clouds, but I knew I was walking out a different person. Not broken, not defeated. Just, quiet. Quiet enough for them not to notice the storm gathering in me. Because while they thought they had stripped me of everything, they had overlooked one detail: I had access to the veins of their empire, the silent streams of money that kept their kingdom alive. And one by one, I would close those veins. If betrayal is a weapon, silence can be sharper. The first night after being thrown out, I lay on the floor of my tiny apartment, staring at the cracked ceiling. I had nothing but a suitcase of clothes, my laptop, and the echo of my father's voice: "You were never cut out for this." That line repeated like a curse. But curses, if you hold them long enough, can turn into fuel. I opened my laptop and logged into the company's backend. My father had forgotten that for years, I managed payroll, accounts, and transactions. I knew passwords, routing codes, every hidden corner of our empire's machinery. And there it was, rows of transfers, direct debits, automatic payments that fed the illusion of their untouchable power. I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I just hovered my finger over the cancel button. With one quiet click, I cut off a supplier's payment worth $120,000. Another click, the utilities account paused. Another, the mortgage transfers redirected into a frozen queue. Each cancellation felt like breathing again, like reclaiming a piece of myself they thought was dead. Lucas texted me that week, a single smug line: "Hope you're adjusting to your new reality." I smiled at the screen. He had no idea what reality was about to feel like. A month later, the silence broke. My phone lit up with my mother's message at 7:43 a.m. "Mortgage is due." I stared at the words. No greeting, no softness, just expectation. As if I still existed to rescue them, to cover cracks they created. My thumbs hovered, my heart steady. Then I typed the reply, simple, brutal, undeniable. "Not mine." I hit send. For a moment, I expected guilt to rise, some part of me begging to undo it. Instead, there was a calm I'd never known before. Because finally, for once in my life, I was free of their chains. And freedom tastes sharper when it's stolen back. The morning after I sent "not mine," I expected silence. Instead, my phone lit up like wildfire. First came Lucas. "What did you do?" Then my father, a missed call, then another. No voicemail. He never left voicemails, too proud for that. Finally, a message from my mother. "Don't be childish. Family helps family." I almost laughed. Family. The same family that shoved me out of a mahogany office like a stranger trespassing in her own home. By noon, I got an email from the bank, 3 cancelled transfers flagged as irregular activity. That meant my moves were no longer invisible. I closed the laptop, calm as a surgeon, knowing that panic was spreading through their veins. That night, Lucas showed up at my apartment. He pounded on the door like he owned the building. His voice carried down the hallway, sharp, commanding. "Open the damn door, Marissa." I didn't move. I stood in the dark, watching his shadow shift under the door frame. He cursed, kicked the door once, then finally spat the words I'd been waiting for. "You'll regret this." But he left. And in the silence after, my heartbeat didn't race. It steadied. Because regret wasn't mine to hold anymore. The next day, whispers reached me through a friend still working at the company. Suppliers were calling non-stop. The mortgage account was in arrears. Utilities threatened to cut power to one of the warehouses. Lucas was scrambling. My father was livid. And my mother, she was the one sending desperate texts now. "Please, think of the family name." The irony was bitter. I had thought of the family name my whole life. I had carried it, polished it, fought for it. And when the time came, they stripped me of it like it was a coat I didn't deserve to wear. Now, their empire was bleeding from the cuts they never saw me make. And this was only the beginning. The phone calls stopped being angry. They turned desperate. By the end of that week, I received a voicemail from my father, the man who once said I was never cut out for this. His voice, usually iron and unshakable, cracked with something I'd never heard before: fear. "Marissa, we need to talk. You don't understand what's at stake here. Just call me back." I didn't. Instead, I walked through the city that night with the kind of freedom that comes when the chains finally break. Neon lights flickered against wet pavement, the hum of traffic swallowing every thought but one. They finally know what it feels like to need me. Lucas wasn't built for pressure. I knew it, had watched it in boardrooms when numbers didn't add up. He'd sweat, deflect, charm his way out until someone else carried the weight. But now there was no one left to clean up. Suppliers pulled out of deals. A warehouse lost power mid-shipment. The company's reputation was dipping, and fast. My mother tried last. A text so unlike her, I read it twice to be sure. "Marissa, please. This isn't about money anymore. We could lose everything. You don't want that." But she was wrong. I did want that, not because I was cruel, but because it wasn't really mine to lose. They made sure of that. I stood at my window, watching headlights streak across the avenue, and whispered the truth I'd never said out loud. I don't belong to them anymore. And it felt like the first prayer I'd ever believed in. The next morning, a letter slid under my door. No return address, but the handwriting was my father's. I picked it up slowly, my chest tightening as I realized, this wasn't just business falling apart. This was bloodline cracking, splintering under its own betrayal. Inside was a single sentence, written with a shaky hand. "Meet me before it's too late." For the first time since this began, I felt the ground shift beneath me. I met him at a dim cafe on the edge of downtown. Not the kind of place my father would ever step into willingly. He was a man of glass towers and marble floors, but desperation forces even kings into alleys. He was already there when I walked in, shoulders hunched, suit wrinkled, hands wrapped too tightly around a chipped coffee cup. For the first time, he looked small. "Marissa," he said, standing halfway before sinking back down. "Thank you for coming." I slid into the booth opposite him, silent, letting the weight of his unease fill the space. He cleared his throat, voice low. "You don't understand what you've done. The mortgage is overdue. Suppliers are threatening lawsuits. If this continues..." I cut him off with a single look. 4 years, I had been the daughter who listened, nodded, obeyed. Now I let silence speak for me. He faltered, then leaned closer. "We can fix this. I can bring you back in. Not as much as Lucas, of course, but something. A percentage. Respectable." The words tasted sour before they even finished leaving his mouth. Respectable. As if he were offering scraps from a table I had helped build. I finally spoke, my voice calm, almost detached. "You didn't just cut me out, Dad. You erased me. Now you want me to save you." His eyes flashed, not with anger, but shame. He opened his mouth, then closed it. For once, he had no speech prepared, no strategy to control the room. The hum of the cafe grew louder around us, spoons clinking, rain against the window, while between us, only silence remained. I stood, sliding the chair back slowly, deliberately. His hand reached out across the table, trembling, but I didn't take it. Instead, I leaned down just enough for him to hear. You made your choice. Now you get to live with it. And I walked away, leaving him alone in that booth, surrounded by strangers who didn't know they were watching a dynasty collapse. By the end of that week, the cracks weren't whispers anymore, they were headlines. Hale Enterprises faces liquidity crisis. Suppliers pull contracts amid leadership dispute. Lucas's face, once smug and polished in magazine features, was now plastered online with captions that bled words like failure and incompetent heir. I scrolled through each article slowly, almost reverently, as if turning the pages of a book I had been waiting my whole life to read. One night, I passed by the old headquarters. Through the tinted glass, I saw him pacing the boardroom, tie loose, hair disheveled. He slammed a file down on the table, shouting at shadows, his reflection more enemy than ally. The same man who had told me to leave now looked like he was clawing to stay afloat. My phone buzzed again. This time, not my parents, not Lucas, but an unknown number. She's crying, Marissa. Your mother. She's terrified. Are you really going to let them lose everything? I didn't reply. Because here's the truth, they hadn't lost everything. They had taken everything from me first. But silence wasn't as easy as it had been in the beginning. At night, in the quiet of my small apartment, guilt scratched faintly at the door. I thought of my mother's message, of the house she lived in, the walls I had grown up within. Then I thought of her silence in that lawyer's office, her refusal to defend me. That silence had been her choice. And mine now was the echo of it. The company's collapse moved like a storm, fast, merciless, impossible to outrun. And for the first time, Lucas had no umbrella, no shield. He was exposed to the world. And I, the sister cast out, watched as the empire turned to dust, grain by grain. Sometimes revenge doesn't roar. Sometimes it whispers, until the walls cave in. It was Lucas who showed up first, not my father. He stood outside my apartment building in the rain, hair plastered to his forehead, suit jacket clinging like a costume he no longer deserved. When I opened the door to the lobby, he didn't smirk. He didn't even speak. He just stared, eyes hollow, mouth trembling like he was choking on pride. Finally, the words fell. They're going to take the house. Not our house. Not the family's house. Just the house. Stripped of ownership, stripped of security. I didn't answer. I let the silence stretch until it cut him more deeply than anything I could have said. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Marissa. I can't do this. I thought I could, but, he broke off, rubbing his face. You have to stop. Please. The man who once shoved me out of an office now stood begging in a doorway. And yet, instead of satisfaction, what rose inside me was something colder, clarity. This wasn't about me anymore. It was about the truth they refused to face, that their empire was built on control, not loyalty. On taking, not giving. That evening, my mother called. Her voice was hoarse, shaky. Your father's in the hospital. Stress. The doctor said it's serious. Marissa, please, come. I stood by the window, city lights glowing like scattered embers. Her words echoed, but I couldn't tell if they were meant to summon guilt or forgiveness. Because here's what she didn't understand. They had already put me in a hospital once, not with walls and beds, but with silence, with exile, with the death of my worth. And now, as their kingdom collapsed around them, they wanted me to play savior. But I wasn't their savior. I was their mirror. And mirrors don't lie. I did go to the hospital, but not to rescue anyone. The sterile hallway smelled of antiseptic and wilted flowers. My father lay pale against white sheets, monitors beeping a rhythm that once would have terrified me. Lucas sat slumped in a chair, suit wrinkled, eyes red. My mother stood at the window, clutching her phone like it could still save her. When I walked in, they all looked up. For a moment, hope flickered across their faces, hope that I would step forward, slip back into the role of the dutiful daughter, the one who fixed their mistakes, covered their debts, carried their shame. But I didn't move closer. I stood at the foot of the bed, hands steady, voice calm. I'm not here to save what you broke. I'm here to tell you I survived it. My father opened his mouth, lips trembling, but no words came. Lucas lowered his gaze. My mother whispered my name like a prayer, one I could no longer believe in. I pulled an envelope from my bag and placed it on the bedside table. Inside were the last transfer codes I had control of, permanently cancelled, signed out of my reach forever. There's nothing left for me to undo, I said softly. It's yours now. All of it. Silence filled the room, heavier than the machines. Then I turned and walked away. Outside, the air was cold but alive. I breathed it in, letting it fill me in ways their empire never had. I wasn't walking away empty. I was walking away whole. For once, I wasn't defined by what they gave me or what they took. I was defined by the fact that I had let go. And in letting go, I had won. Because true revenge isn't destruction. It's freedom.